Good Friday morning. At least it's Friday morning here in Sacramento, California. And what I've got here is an old edition of the Equinox of the Gods. I got it out yesterday because we were talking about Ankh-f-n-Khonsu and his ongoing adventure in the across the Gulf, which we're going to continue briefly today. But in the Equinox of the Gods is sort of the volume that recounts the circumstances of the reception of the Book of the Law and the Supreme Invocation of Horus, the events surrounding the 1904 invocation of Horus, and the whole beginning of the Age of Horus, I guess, or the Aeon of Horus. But in the very back here, notice there's a whole bunch of Kabbalistic notes and doodles, and that's probably in Crowley's own handwriting. I do believe it is. But you'll notice he's got Ankh-f-n-Khonsu there toward the right, kind of toward the bottom, Ankh-f-n-Khonsu, and he's got it spelled in such a way with a final T or Tav at the end. Whatever it is, it's giving him he's enumerating it to 666. He's got lots of other landmark Kabbalah numbers and things like that. And if you'll notice, he's got, they're all far to the left there toward the bottom, you'll see M dot 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 M 93. Those are the secret degree words that he's at least telling us that all three of those add to 93. There's lots of fun stuff. Abrahadabra, there's 418. Anyway, a lot of neat stuff. Now we are continuing today with chapter 6. It's our 7th installment. I didn't know it was going to go this long, but I'm being encouraged to see this project through to the end. So we're probably going to be doing it for a few more days. Anyway, if you've been listening so far, or tuning in, or watching, you'll notice that the story is wild and fanciful, and I have to admit or observe that it is much in the style and it's reminiscent of the Marquis de Sade, the writings of the Marquis de Sade, Justine, and it's titillatingly violent, and there's lots of blood, and there's so many people get killed and zapped and blown up and crushed, and slaves are slain after they do a magical chore of some kind, and then somebody slays all of those slaves, and there's a lot of slaying going on, okay, and a lot of crazy ass things. You think the story's moving along quite nicely, and then someone just up and kills somebody, or somebody's head explodes, or it's shocking in a way, but oddly addictive. Okay, it's like eating sadistic candy. What the hell is he going to do next? And you could see sort of Crowley saying to himself, I'm I'm going to let my imagination run free. And at this moment in my life, my imagination is running along the same psychological lines as writers such as the Marquis de Sade. So that's what I kept saying at the very beginning. This is a crazy tale here. Not that there isn't great magical, I guess we could say, secrets discussed or hinted at or referred to or flat out revealed within the narrative. So, and at this time of his life, I guess it was pretty early. This particular equinox was 1912, and but anyway, so I'm going to let it stand for itself and continue with this brief chapter 6 of Across the Gulf. Without any long delay, I descended the slopes and entered the city. Now, this is a city that wasn't Thebai, okay? This is after he was picked up by a whirlwind and carried out to the desert just after the destruction of the temple of Isis and his installation and transformation from the priestess of Isis to the high priest of Osiris. Not knowing what might have taken place back in Thebai, and what news might have come hither, I did not dare declare myself, but seeking out the high priest of Horus in this town, I showed him a certain sign telling him that I was come from Memphis on a journey and intended to visit Thebai to pay homage at the shrine of Isis. But he was full of the news and told me that the ancient priestess of Isis, who had become priest of Osiris, him, had been taken up to heaven as a sign of the signal favor of the god. Whereat I could hardly hold myself from laughter. Yet I controlled myself and answered that I was now prepared to return to Memphis, for that I was vowed to Isis and Osiris and could not serve my term. And this he begged me to stay as his guest and to go worship at the temple of Isis in this city. I agreed thereto, and the good man gave me new robes and jewels from the treasury of his own temple. There, too, I rested sweetly on soft cushions, fanned by young boys with broad leaves of palm. Also, he sent me the dancing girl of sleep. It was the art of this girl to weave such subtle movements that the sense, watching her, swooned. And as she swayed, she sang, ever lower and lower as she moved slower and slower, until the listener was dissolved in bliss of sleep and delicate dream. Then as he slept, she would bend over him, even as Nuit, the lady of the stars, that bendeth over the black earth. And in his ears she would whisper strange rhythms, secret utterances, whereby his spirit would be wrapped into the realms of Hathor or some other golden goddess, there in one night to reap and harvest of refreshment, such as the fields of mortal sleep yield never. So then I woke at dawn to find her still watching, still looking into my eyes with a tender smile on her mouth that cooed whispers infinitely soothing. Indeed, with a soft kiss she waked me, for in this art There is a right moment to sleep and another to awaken, which she was well skilled to divine. I rose then. She flitted away like a bird, and robed myself, and seeking my host, went forth with him to the temple of Isis. Now their ritual, it appeared, differed in one point from that to which I was accustomed. Thus it was not death to intrude upon the ceremony, save only for the profane. Priests of a certain rank of initiation might, if they pleased, behold it. I, therefore, wishing to see again that marvelous glowing of the veil, that was part of the Isis worship, disclosed a sufficient sign to the high priest. Thereat he was mightily amazed, and from the foot, judging Hercules, began to think that I might be some sacred envoy or inspector from the gods themselves. Hey, this guy's heavy. He knew the secret sign. Okay. This I allowed him to think. Meanwhile, we went forward into the shrines and stood behind the pillars unseen in the prescribed position. Now it chanced that the high priestess herself had this day chosen to perform the rite. This was a woman, tall and black, most majestic, with limbs strong as a man's. Her gaze was hawk keen and her brow commanding. But at the assumption of the god form, she went close and whispered into the veil so low that we could not hear it. But as it seemed, with fierce intensity, with some passion that knotted up her muscles so that her arms writhed like wounded snakes. Also the veins of her forehead swelled and foam came to her lips. We thought that she had died. Her body swelled and shuddered. Last of all, a terrible cry burst from her throat, inarticulate, awful. Yet all this, while the veil glittered, though something somberly. Also the air was filled with a wild, sweeping music which rent over our very ears with its uncouth magic. For it was like no music that I had ever heard before. At last the priestess tore herself away from the veil and reeled as one drunken down the temple. Sighs and sobs tore her breast, and her nails made bloody grooves in her wet flanks. On a sudden, she espied me and my companion. With one buffet she smote him to earth. It is unlawful to resist the priestess when she is in the ecstasy of union. And falling upon me like a wild beast, she buried her teeth in my neck, bearing me to the ground. Then loosing me, while the blood streamed from me, she fixed her glittering eyes upon it with a strange joy, and with her hands she shook me as a lion shakes a buck. Sinewy were her hands, with big knuckles, and the strength of her was as the cords of iron. Yet her might was but a mortal's, and in a little she gave one gasp like a drowning man's. Her body slackened and fell with its dead weight on mine. Her mouth glued to mine in one dreadful kiss. Dreadful, for as my mouth returned it almost mechanically, the blood gushed from her nostrils and blinded me. I too then, more dead than alive, swooned into bliss, into trance. I was awakened by the high priest of Horus. "Come," he said, "she is dead." And I disengaged myself from all that weight of madness, and the body writhed convulsively as I turned it over. I kissed those frothy lips, for in death she was beautiful beyond belief, joyous beyond description. Thence I staggered to the veil and saluted with all my strength, so that it glittered under the force of my sheer will. Then I turned me again, and with the high priest sought his house. Strange indeed was I as I went through the city, my new robes dark with blood of that most holy sorceress. But no one of the people dared so much as lift his eyes, nor spoke as we together at all. But when we were come into the house of the high priest, sternly did he confront me. "What is this, my son?" And I, weary of the folly of the world and of the uselessness of things, answered him, "Father, I go back to Memphis. I am the Magus of the well." He tells him another whopper. Okay. Now he knew the Magus and answered me, "Why liest thou?" And I said, "I am come into the world where all speech is false and all speech is true." I got to digress for a second. The supernal triad of the tree of life, 1, 2, and 3. It's beyond the abyss. It's beyond duality. That's a level of consciousness where all speech is false and all speech is true, and something is true only insofar as it profoundly contains within itself its own contradiction. And I said, I am come into the world where all speech is false and all speech is true. Then he did me reverence, abasing himself unto the ground, even unto the 99 times. And I spurned him and said, "Bring forth the dancing girl of sleep, for in the morning I will away to Memphis." And she came forth, and I cursed her and cried, "Be thou the dancing girl of love." And it was so. And I went into her and knew her, and in the morning I girded myself and boarded the state barge of the high priest, and pillowed myself upon gold and purple, and disported myself with lutes and with lyres and with parrots, and with black slaves, and with wine, and with delicious fruits, until I came even unto the holy city of Memphis. And this is what I'm talking about. And there I called soldiers of Pharaoh, and put cruelly to death all them that had accompanied me. And I burnt the barge adrift upon the Nile at sunset, so that the flames alarmed the foolish citizens. All this I did, and danced naked in my madness through the city, until I came to the old Magus of the well. And laughing, I threw a stone upon him, crying, "Ree me the riddle of my life." And he answered not. Then I threw a great rock upon him, and I heard his bones crunch, and I cried in mockery, "Ree me the riddle of thy life." But he answered not. Then I threw down the wall of the well, And I burned the house with fire that stood thereby, with the men servants and the maid servants. And none dared stay me, for I laughed and exulted in my madness. Yea, verily, I laughed and laughed and laughed. Well, in that disturbing revelation of Crowley's subconscious mind, what he is describing is at the change of the equinox of the gods, which was announced by his ex-old deceased friend, the hermit in the well. The aeon changed, and the high priesthood changed from the high priestess of Isis to the priest of Osiris. The whole administration of the gods, the formula of the gods, had shifted. And in his crazy madness, going to another town, destroying their temple and Isis administration, temple and priestess, he's coming back and literally destroying the mechanism that even helped bring in the age change from Isis to Osiris, as if yes, we're moving from formula to formula, but at the transition of the two, the old formula is so decayed, so corrupt, so qliphothic that it needs to be wiped out. And in other places, Crowley mentions that at the change of each equinox, there's usually some great conflagration or each aeon is announced by a bloodbath of some kind. And Crowley was pointing at the time, through his observation of the events leading up to World War I, and then later World War II, and if he would have lived long enough to actually realize the impact of the atomic bomb, he would have seen that too, and I think in his mind would probably have validated his view that new aeons come in on a sea of blood. Anyway, that's how he envisioned it happening for Ankh-f-n-Khonsu at the beginning of the age of Osiris, or the aeon of Osiris. Anyway, isn't that a happy tale? On that happy note, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow for Saturday morning cartoons. Until then, be good to yourself. You can't be good to anybody else until you're good to yourself first, okay? And be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.